Hello and welcome to the first episode of Media Musings dealing with this year's Lit Month, which I do in honor of cripe. I cannot talk.
That's a good example of Lit Month.
I do in honor of Banned Book Week, so every September I do a Lit Month. So this is the second one. Before we get started, definitely not sponsored, but if you are looking for ebooks ebooks of books that were published before what I call the Mickey barrier.
And Disney.
Yeah, I'd highly suggest going to Project Gutenberg, because they have, their entire thing is collecting as many public domain books as they can and then just giving out ebook editions of them. So yeah, basically anything made before Mickey Mouse is probably in the public domain. Anything made after Mickey Mouse will never be in public domain.
As long as Disney want to keep pushing those boundaries so they don't lose Mickey or anything else for that matter. Yeah, copyright is going to go on forever.
Yeah, and so Critical Cripple, thank you for putting it in the chat. It's also in the description along with a bunch of other links. So currently we have, obviously Dave, Amiga Nuts, Linda, Julie LaVoice, glad to see you in the chat. Godless Granny.
Did you say Grammy?
Yes. Yes, because
actual Christian rock ones to get the God.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the one that Jethro Tull won for Aqualung might be a Godless Grammy.
I don't know. Did Black Sabbath win any?
Possibly. Probably. So, Godless Granny, Godless Scummer, and I think that's everyone who's commenting in the chat. And hello to anyone who is lurking or might be watching in the future.
And if anyone in the chat wants to contribute anything to this, seeing as how poor Julie is so tired that she can't join us, and that's okay, Julie, perfectly fine, not having to go. But if anybody else wants to hop in and talk about Gulliver's Travels with us, just hit one of us up for the link in Twitter.
Yeah, and the Grammy Award-winning Godless Granny. But speaking of Gulliver's Travels, I did a little bit of a poll for the purposes of this stream. And the results are in. And I'll zoom in a bit. No, I thought that was the magnifying glass. There we go. So very, very, very important question, especially if you're... Oh, and hello there, Microraptor.
Oh, hi, Microraptor.
And of course, once we get into things, we'll see why this is a very important question. But how do you eat your eggs? So just under 26% of the respondents break the big end of the egg and are thus terrible heretics who deserve to be purged. 34.4 people, of the respondents are answered with the right answer of breaking the small end. Oh, and Microraptor says, the egg is flat. Don't believe the lies. And, hi, Paul Kamish. Glad to see you in the chat. And, of course, my wonderful... wonderful wifey, Danger Hissy is also slithered into the chat.
Slithered in.
Yes.
Slytherin. Oh,
yes.
I get it.
And of course, because my Twitter following is full of atheists, egg eating is delusional, which won the poll by about 5%. So, yeah. But, anyways.
Yep.
Yeah.
Eggs are delusional, by the way.
Yeah, eggs are well, and of course, Microraptor thinks that eggs are flat. Well, I mean, they are when you cook them.
Not always. I mean...
they are when you fry them.
Not always. I mean, if you have them sunny side up, they got a little bump in them.
Yeah.
If you have them scrambled, they're sort of all mashed up everywhere. So
yeah. And I cannot pronounce words. I cannot do the word thing.
Yeah. Well, what is Microraptor saying now? In computing, there is something called idioms. It refers to how you arrange the bytes and is named the Gulliver's Travels thing.
Yeah. So, and actually, Gulliver's Travels did end up pegging our
only
eggs.
When they're hard-boiled, Jeff. Only when they're hard-boiled.
Our eggs atheists. Montana. So practically Canada.
Practically in Canada.
Yeah. So, but
I will apologize to everybody for any noise they're getting from me at the moment. I am unfortunately not on my own computer, and I've got a crappy little mic.
and there is a bird in the background.
Bird. Yes, there's definitely a bird, and there's a game going in the background as well. Stacey's playing games, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think the game. I don't think the game is coming through, but the bird definitely is.
The bird comes through. Yeah, the bird's adorable. If you start saying "pretty boy," he's a pretty boy, and what else did you say, Stace?
Scratch, scratch.
Oh, scratch, scratch, and a few other things. You might actually hear him talking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dave. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Hissy's got it right. Hard-boiled eggs are cut-priced atheists.
Yeah.
But they're appealing.
Yeah. And
Who's
Paul,
Simon?
Paul is northern. Say it in my accent. Yeah, the thing, Hissy. Every time I try your accent, I go too far north and I turn Scottish. You know this.
Yeah, and don't start doing Scottish for me. You know what happens.
And I'm from Montana.
Granny, who is Simon? I just saw this. I'm Simon in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Who is Simon?
Possibly of Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. That kind of fit.
Let's see.
I like that joke.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna scroll back up to Microraptor's comment.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Called so it's a really good thing to mention because Gulliver's Travels actually did contribute some words to the English lexicon, like for instance the less popular Brobdingnagian for something absolutely massive, or the more well used, particularly as an insult, Yahoo. The word the word Yahoo actually does come from Gulliver's Travels. And I'm sorry for your loss, Granny. And yes, Hissy, the puppy, the puppy god demands that you obey the word of my prophet, Hissy.
Yeah, I'm sorry too, Granny. It's always hard when you lose a pet.
Yeah.
We've got a cat that we're probably gonna have to put down before we ship because it looks like she's got cancer. So not keen on that.
Yeah. So, anyways, Gulliver's Travels.
Too positive.
Yeah. So, Gulliver's Travels is a British satire written in the early mid 1700s by Jonathan Swift. No, that's a good over a decade before I was born. So, anyways, and of course, Jonathan Swift is also rather famous for the modest proposal he had for Parliament about dealing with famines in Ireland.
Yeah. See, there's an awful lot of satire on the world in general in Gulliver's Travels.
Oh yeah,
which follows on well from last week's show.
Yeah, which is kind of why I made Gulliver's Travels the first topic of Lit Month. But like for instance, there's a lot of satire on English and French relations in the Lilliput section. So you know what? That's the first section of the book. So let's go ahead and start there. Yeah. So Gulliver gets in a shipwreck.
Don't they always? All these stories sort of start off with shipwrecks back then, don't they? I suppose because it was the most common form of long distance travel. So if you're shipwrecked, you're going to end up somewhere foreign and exotic. Yeah.
Well, and of course, aside from all political, and moral satire of the book. The Gulliver's Travels, it is in and of itself a satire of the traveler, genre.
It is.
Like for instance, the Adventures of Marco Polo, the Travels by Ibn Battuta, and various others that were popular at the time, but have kind of faded into obscurity because I can't name them.
Swiss Family Robinson would have been.
I don't think Swiss. Well, one Swiss Family Robinson was came out a good
Yeah, it's about 40 years later, actually. I think.
Yeah, 40 years later, and I don't count that as a travel novel. It's a castaway novel.
Oh yeah, I suppose it would be Castaway.
Yeah, Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson, The Mysterious Island, and more recently The Martian are all what I'd call castaway stories rather than travel stories.
Although the travel does form part of that story.
Yeah,
I mean that's
a good example. Well, like I said, Marco Polo, Travels of Ibn Battuta. Another good satire of the travelogue is
travel story too.
What?
Odyssey.
You'll
It's a hero story too.
We'll have to add, when Hissy's on, we'll have to ask her. Yeah, Hissy, I know you're in the chat. Would you consider the Odyssey a travel story? Because what I mean by a travel story is these are all the places I've been to, and this is how all these countries are.
Yeah.
For instance, Around the World in 80 Days could conceivably fall into that category. Especially when they hit America and there's a good half a chapter, or rather when they hit Utah and there's a good half a chapter of Mormon jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Martian got cast very far away. And so anyways, and of course, what did I do?
What did you do?
What did I do?
Probably about what I said about the Odyssey being a travel story.
Yeah, or maybe me disagreeing that the Odyssey isn't a travel story, or
you didn't actually answer the question.
Yeah.
Do you need to come on, Hissy, and correct one of us?
Yeah, so yeah, who's in trouble? Is it me for saying that the Odyssey isn't a travelogue, or is Jen in trouble for saying the Odyssey is a travelogue?
And do you need to come in on this chat for 5 minutes and berate one of us?
Yeah.
Or both of us, maybe.
Yeah. And I'd say the Asterix, the Asterix and Obelix series is something of a travelogue, as a whole, because every other comic they're going to a new place and it's just about the place.
Yeah.
The Odyssey is a travel story. Damn it, Jen. So
I win.
So damn it, Jen, and she's not actually on stream, but I think we did have a hissy fit in the chat. But
we should talk about the parallels between the Odyssey and Gulliver's Travels. Okay, I know. Okay, I am terribly sorry, Hissy. I know I'm cruising for a bruisey here.
No,
I would just go and hide.
yeah, and yeah, I am Hissy's husband.
Love you, Hissy.
And thank you, Microraptor.
That's because they are both lovely.
Yes. All the lovely people. Okay. Anyways,
Yeah,
let's try and get this train back on track. Yeah, though I mean it is fairly, it is fairly topical that we spend like the first 20 minutes of a discussion on Gulliver's Travels just wandering the fuck around everywhere.
Oh, Camish.
Yeah. So anyways, so the story proper, after a couple of satirical forewords, the story proper begins with Gulliver describing how he grew up poor and he's working as a ship's doctor, and he gets shipwrecked in a storm, and wakes and collapses on the shore of a island and wakes up to find he's been tied down. And of course, this is the section of Gulliver's Travels that pretty much everyone knows because it's the only section that what's the word reliably it's the only one that reliably gets adapted, because pretty much every adaptation, at least in film, of Gulliver's Travels that I've seen seems to only focus on the Lilliput section of the story.
Yeah.
And excuse me.
You're excused.
So and he finds that the people of the island of Lilliput are tiny. Like everything on Lilliput is like scaled. Yes. I cannot word today. I have the Bethesda brain.
But Ring, you are the bestest at making the words.
Yeah. I am the bestest and the greatest at the words. Believe me. So anyways, and and this is, the satire basically starts off from the get-go, because they're like, Gulliver talks about like needing to use the restroom, which is something that you don't really see in the protagonist of any story.
Yeah.
Let's see.
He'd have to be really careful where he dug a hole, wouldn't he?
Yeah, the best, but in the so I have epilepsy, so I like to say that my brain is glitchier than a Bethesda game. So, anyways, and also so they, after a bit, they give him a sleeping potion, and he blacks out while they move him onto like essentially a giant set of rollers so they can take him to the capital.
Tie him down.
And of course, and this is a great bit of satire here, which is why I'm even bringing it up. In the middle of it, Gulliver awakes briefly because a couple of the soldiers who were escorting the machine decided it'd be a good idea to stick one of their pikes up his nose. So he sneezes and wakes up, and then gets conked back out because he's heavily drugged. And so they
so that's awesome.
Well, and to be fair, the elements of satire, at least in Gulliver's Travels, makes it feel like a realer story. Because I've been in the military, and yeah, that's something that a couple of privates would do.
Yeah, I mean, when they found him, just answering Microraptor, they got him on rollers so they could roll him in because he was huge compared to them.
Yeah.
And they tied him to the rollers, which was effectively like tying him with little beads of cotton.
Yeah.
They're ropes, but cotton to him. They tied him with all this cotton to the rollers so that he couldn't get up because they were terrified. There's this huge giant.
Yeah. They literally call him the Man Mountain.
Yeah. Well, you know, of all the things when I was a kid reading the story, it was fun having this guy who was this giant encountering all these little people. That was fine in my head. But the fact that on the island all the plants and vegetation were their size and not larger size, and I knew the vegetation was more or less the same across the entire planet. My brain was like, even I was thinking of 7 or 8 when I first read it. I was like, no, this does not work.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because later, the Lilliputians think that Gulliver must have fallen from the moon or one of the stars or something, because there's no way there could be entire nations of people his size, or else it would have just ravaged the world.
Yeah.
I mean, we are doing a pretty good job of ravaging the world as now, but
well, I think that was actually part of the satire too, was to make that sort of statement anyway, that we weren't good for the world. It was almost
possible that could possibly be an interpretation, but the way it's written in context, it's more of just like the thoughts that of dismissing wild improbabilities.
Yeah.
Because this it's 17, mid 17. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna double check.
Yeah, no, I'll look it up. I got the page open.
Yeah.
It was 1726.
Okay, so
193 years ago.
Yeah, so let's see.
Pre-industrial revolution.
Yeah. It's either pre-industrial revolution or very early into the industrial revolution. So we probably,
because I think I've got my history wrong.
Yeah.
See help.
Yeah. So probably it's not an environmentalism thing, because that
read that into it now though. 1760. No, it is pre-industrial revolution.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, it is pre. So Jonathan Swift wouldn't have been commenting on environmental stuff because that really hadn't been apparent to us yet, because we haven't gone through the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution is when we really start fucking with the environment.
The steam engine, though, at that point, when did... Because he's in Ireland, so he would have had some inkling of the stuff that was coming. So...
But anyways...
Sorry. 1712. He would have seen the pumping steam engines that were pumping sewage and water around the country, and he would have been aware of it. So
but
he would have seen the early smog, but pre-industrial revolution.
But it wouldn't have been late enough for the beginning of the environmental impact to come to light yet.
And the concepts of we are more aware now of the environmental impact of stuff like that than they were back then. But they were also very well aware of what the smog did. We don't get smog now like they did. Yeah. Because there's not the smoke going into the air and stuff like that. So the particulate in the air from what we do is a lot less because we're more cautious about it. So in England, when the Industrial Revolution started, there was thick, smoky, hot haze just about everywhere. It was, if you were on on a cooler day when you would have had fog, you became smog.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's see.
It's funny how that's called progress. Sorry, and I've totally sidetracked.
Yeah.
Shut up.
There is some commentary on colonialism in Gulliver's Travels. And yes, eras like that are just approximates. But the point is the environmental impact of the Industrial Revolution wouldn't have been apparent until at least, maybe the 1800s.
1860 is when they state is the start of the Industrial Revolution, because that's when you got heavy industrialization, but it started before then. So it's probably a good 20 years before. He probably published the book a good 20 years before that, because, what did I say? He was published in 1826, and they don't credit the start of the Industrial Revolution.
Well, 1726
until 1760. So you're talking nearly 40 years. I think you're probably talking somewhere in the middle, like before you really started seeing.
And the environmental impacts weren't really apparent until we really started industrializing on a mass scale.
Yeah, they saw the smoke getting put out, and from the early steam engines, and they knew this. That they probably, if you lived in a big city, you probably started to see the effects of, but most of the rest of the people wouldn't.
But anyways, so he's chained up in an old desecrated temple, because that's the only building big enough to house him. And eventually manages to talk his way into getting released after the... So,
wasn't it only his head that was in the temple?
What?
It was only his head, or the top part of his body, because they couldn't get all of him in it.
No, he was able to, crawl into it and curl up.
Okay.
Yeah. But which is kind of part of the comedy is just the absurdity of Gulliver trying to move around in this tiny world, on this tiny island. But so the king has Gulliver searched to make sure he's not carrying any deadly, weapons.
Like he'd need a deadly weapon?
Yeah.
He is a deadly weapon.
Well, but, protocol must be, must be observed. And we get a lovely bit of satire when, because, instead of like your usual pat down, what they do is Gulliver takes the officials and puts them in his pockets. And when they get into the pocket with his pocket watch, because Jonathan Swift is gracious enough to include a translation of the actual report. And we get this lovely satirical quote here. We conjecture it is either some unknown animal or the god that he worships, but we are more inclined to the latter opinion because he assured us that he seldom did anything without consulting it. And of course, this is referring to Gulliver's pocket watch.
Yeah.
So a little bit of satire on the quote unquote modern schedule being ruled by the clock, which probably was a bit ahead of its time.
I'm trying to think when good pocket watches were invented.
Well, not the but like if it wasn't the first bit of jokes about that, it's probably early. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the pocket watch had been around 200 years when he wrote about it. So
yeah. So yeah, enough time for it to have really begun to see popular use.
Yeah, popular, not just the gentry and the people who have lots of money. The average person would have had one.
And of course, the jokes about how everyone's life is ruled by the watt, ruled by their clocks. And
right.
it definitely would work as a satire of smartphones.
Oh, it would look so much better done in modern times than looking at their smartphone.
Yeah.
And then if they had a little solar charging unit for it that they had to plug it into and sort of working over that they're worshipping it now.
Yeah.
They're giving it an offering.
Yeah, it would definitely work as a satire of smartphones. Yeah. But of course, there's not just one kingdom of tiny little people. There is a rival kingdom. The kingdom of Blefusco. And part of the terms of his release was that he would aid in defending against the invasion of this. So he basically, he gets them to make some cables for him and takes some iron bars and makes hooks. Wades across the channel to Blefusco, and then hippity hoppity, their fleet is his property.
Let's play fishing.
Yeah. And then it's like, then the ruler, gets a bit greedy and demands that Gulliver subjugate Blefusco to put it under his rule.
Yeah.
Which we get a bit, in my opinion, this is very much likely a satire of English and French relations.
Yeah.
Yeah, because especially since you get the whole they're harboring big Indian refugees from Lilliput and Blefusco.
Mm.
And of course, that was originally seen as the proper way to eat eggs. But one day, one of the kings cut his mouth, eating an egg that way. So he issued a decree that everyone will eat their eggs by cracking the small end, which, to me, it is very much a satire on Henry VIII. Starting the Church of England to protest, not being able to divorce.
Of course.
Yeah.
Doesn't King Henry VIII just come completely off as I'm taking my ball and going home?
Yeah.
Not that I think the church should have had any say in who he divorced or not, but I tell you what, the church had a lot to answer for in how many women King Henry VIII put to death.
Well, I think actually, out of his wives that were actually executed, I think most of them, or at most half of them, were Protestant.
Yeah. Didn't he only execute 2 anyway?
Yeah, it was like divorced, executed, died.
Jeff, help.
Yeah.
Jeff would probably know this. He's good with English history.
I'm going to start my own religion with hookers and blackjack. Basically.
By the way, who's Jack?
Yeah. Maybe Microraptor was talking about Jack Black.
Jack Black? Oh, meet Jack Black.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Britain and Spain went to war in 1727, but there were already tensions in 1726. Okay, thank you, Hissy. So, divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived.
Yeah, so he only beheaded 2 of them.
Yeah, and I know one of the... I know the first one that was beheaded was Protestant.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Anne Boleyn was Protestant.
Yeah.
Catherine of Aragon was Catholic and was divorced. Yeah.
Hissy beat you.
Yeah.
Scammer.
Yeah. Hissy has faster fingers.
Hissy's probably laughing enough. She says, "This is an Aussie and an American making a mockery of English history."
Yeah. So
come and correct us.
Yeah. So you have a traitor and a convict mocking your. Yeah. You have a traitor and a convict discussing treasonous satire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, was Catherine Howard? I'm gonna check this because
you don't want him to correct us again.
Well, it's gonna bug me if I don't.
Oh, we need one of them on this stream just to correct us when we're wrong.
Let's see.
Because I'm going to be wrong so often. History is not my strong suit.
Yeah, well, let's see. Catherine Howard religion. Okay, so out of the wives that were executed, half of them, only half of them were Catholic.
Yeah, and that was Catherine.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but to be fair, Catherine Howard was the one who actually screwed up by screwing around.
Yeah. So that would have been labeled treason.
Yeah.
And yet, the misogynistic part of it was the king could screw around all he fucking lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being beheaded is a much kinder fate than having your eyes gouged out and then starved to death, which is what the Lilliputians were going to do to Gulliver.
Yeah.
Because he had the temerity to urinate in the presence of the king's palace because it was currently on fire and he had left his jacket at home. So
he peed on the palace to save the king.
Yes. He peed on the maid servant left a candle on too long. Palace caught fire. Gulliver showed up bit hungover. Didn't have anything on him to try and smother it, so he dropped trow and let loose.
And they didn't show that in the kids animation I saw.
Yeah. Though, if I remember right, that actually did make it into the whatchamacallit, the Hallmark miniseries that was done. But to be fair, the Hallmark miniseries is probably the only one I've seen that does anything beyond just Lilliput.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I peed on it, but it got the fire out.
He's lucky it put it out. He was pretty drunk.
Yeah.
He had a little alcohol.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because apparently Lilliputian wine is a very excellent diuretic. That it's specifically mentioned in the text. And of course, this is a somewhat of a hallmark of early satire, as Hissy mentioned last time, is, a lot of focus on bathroom humor.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're still talking about the wives of Henry VIII in the chat. But
we are talking about Gulliver's Travels. Do you remember Gulliver's Travels, Stacey?
Yeah.
Very, very vaguely, yeah.
Very, very vaguely. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, he manages to escape because he had been given leave to visit Blefuscu on a diplomatic mission. So, pretending that he didn't realize that they had actually sentenced him in absentia, he goes to
Placebo?
Yeah. Of course. Hold on. So if Henry was subpar, did that make Catherine dompar? Sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyways, he managed it, and a boat, just a normal human-sized boat, manages to wash up on the shore. So he manages to get it outfitted and sails out to try and make his way to Tasmania, actually. Because it's mentioned that he is near, he is within the same similar, latitude and longitude to Van Diemen's Land. So, Tasmania, right?
Yeah. Except.
So,
okay. That's going to bug me now.
But yeah, I'm sorry. Well,
Van Diemen's Land is Tasmania, but...
Yeah. But yeah, so... Yeah, Lilliput is presumably somewhere near Tasmania. I think anyone would take kinky over beheading unless they were kinky for being beheaded. And hashtag not my kink. And he runs into a ship, returns to England with some, and he had gotten some livestock. Tasmania is fake, apparently.
Yeah, I find this. I mean, yeah, the able Tasman of the Dutch East India Company first noted Van Diemen's Land in 1642, but it wasn't properly mapped and charted until 1792. So
Yeah, and
it's a weird reference for him to make because they wouldn't have even been sure. No, it's not actually because they wouldn't have been sure it actually existed.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is and actually that's kind of the nice thing about like this era of fantastical fiction is that it's just an island somewhere, it's an island somewhere in, the bits of the map we haven't explored yet.
And we're pretty sure it's there. And we're pretty sure that the other big island is there, which is what they didn't realize how big Australia was. So, yeah, it's almost like he's saying he'd been shipwrecked in Australia, and that's where Lilliput was.
Yeah. So, Lilliput is down near Tasmania, and Brobdingnag is a peninsula off... is a peninsula jutting out from California.
And he walked from California to...
No. So what happens is, he gets signed up for another voyage, and they get blown off course in a storm, and go to and weigh anchor off the coast of this unknown land to take on water, as you do. Yeah. And he, being a traveler, goes ashore and gets separated from the group from the shore party, and gets left behind when a giant chases the crew off, and he's found by let's see. Yeah, definitely yucking beheading kink. Only if you're a praying mantis, and because that's just kind of how praying mantises work.
It's more of a
yeah. I mean, that's the joke. With praying mantises, it's less of a kink thing, more of a hey, there's lunch. Though actually,
I'm a bit tired from shagging. I need something to eat.
Well, actually, ironic. Though, actually, for the males, it might be kind of a kink thing, because scientists actually studied this, or there was actually a study, published on this, because of course there was. And it turns out that if a male praying mantis gets his head bitten off, when he ejaculates, he produces more sperm.
Okay, now I need brain bug in here too.
At least that's what I've read.
Right, I'm tweeting this. Ringmate claims about praying mantises.
Yeah.
We need confirmation, brain bug.
Yeah. But anyways, he gets so Gulliver gets found by a farmer, and the farmer starts making money by showing him around to his friends, because it's this tiny creature, the size and the shape, or a tiny creature, the shape of a man, who seems to be completely rational. and practically works Gulliver to death. Exhibiting him around, and he ends up getting sold to the Queen of the of Brobdingnag as a curiosity, and it's another interesting theme in this is that like the Lilliputians are shown to be very, very petty. Like, they decide court advancement over who can jump the highest. And very much about protocol, empty protocol, and fighting religious wars over which end of the egg you crack while trying to eat it. But the Brobdingnagians see through through discussions with Gulliver, the Brobdingnagian king concludes that Englishmen are odious vermin and basically are described as just as petty and just as petty as insignificant as the
little puppy.
Yeah. Hold on. There's another great quote. I'm trying to track it down. Oh, yeah. You have clearly proved that ignorance, idleness, and vice are the proper ingredients for qualifying a legislator, and the laws are best explained, interpreted, and applied by those whose interests and abilities lie in perverting, confounding, and eluding them. And then he discovered that selling humans isn't very fun when you're the one being sold.
Yeah.
And but yeah, and honestly, I've read Gulliver's Travels before. I'm reading through it again. I've only gotten to Brobdingnag right now, so we're gonna have. So actually, we're not gonna be going into as much detail. We're gonna go with the more brief overview.
That's probably a good plan, considering it's what.
Yeah. It's a good thing because we're already an hour in.
Yeah.
And basically a lot of the humorous and shenanigans that are ensuing are jokes are oh no, Gulliver's tiny or oh no, Gulliver is relatively tiny in a land where everything is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Like a lark is the size of an English swan.
Yeah.
Well, though there is something. We learned that Gulliver apparently prefers people who are members of the ITBC, otherwise known as the Itty Bitty Titty Committee. Because when he's like when he's first brought in by the farmer, there's a rather humorous scene where he's handed off to like the farmer's baby, who sticks him in its mouth, and then drops him when Gulliver freaks out, and then is breastfed, And there's like a good couple paragraphs over how disgusting he found the massive giant booby. Because he could see all the pores and blemishes, because he was, relatively speaking, so tiny.
Yeah.
So the main bit is, the main like theme of the Brobdick, because of course Jonathan Swift had to make them freaking impronounceable. Brobdingnag section of the book is basically as a thematic counterpoint to Lilliput.
Yeah, it's a juxtaposition.
Yeah, the juxtaposition to Lilliput, where everything is so dainty and fair in Lilliput because Gulliver is so big. Meanwhile, everything is coarse and ugly and seems coarse and ugly in Brobdingnag because he's so relatively tiny. And then meanwhile, and the Lilliput political satire is more on alluding to things that have, alluding to, historical conflicts and making pettier versions of them. Like, for instance, the Tories and the Whigs are aped as a party of people who wear tall-heeled shoes and a party of people who wear small-heeled shoes in Lilliput.
Yeah.
It's taking societal and political topics and then making them even more petty. Meanwhile, Brobdingnag, he explains how the English society works, and then the king's like, "Wow, you got some bullshit going on." It's showing their issues to be just as petty and corrupt and as Gulliver had seen Lilliput as. Then hello to the Lone Wanderer.
Hi, Lone Wanderer.
So, third voyage, we get a whirlwind tour of a few different locations. There's the floating city of Laputa, which is everyone's also cerebral and airy and kind of douches. Then there's a couple others that are kind of forgettable, and until he gets to the island where they have the Immortals. And yes, Microraptor, yes, I mean high heels,
the member,
one of the political parties distinguished themselves by wearing high-heeled shoes, and the other political party distinguished themselves by wearing low-heeled shoes. And the young prince who would replace his father as king was suspected of having high heel leanings because he wore a low-heeled shoe on one foot and a high-heeled shoe on the other, which made him have like a hobbling gait.
The person behind me is Stacy and friend. We kind of went to school together. Stacy's a bit younger than me.
Yeah.
I went to school. I was in the same year as her older sister.
Yeah. But anyways, because I remember, like, the Island of the Immortals is an interesting bit of satire because, a lot of fiction about immortality is about trying to achieve it.
Yeah.
So these immortals, life really sucks for them.
It would, wouldn't it, though?
Well, no, because the thing is, it's not the classical image of immortality where you're just kind of stuck at an age forever, right? Their body still ages.
Yeah, they just don't die.
They just don't die. And also, like, when Gulliver wants to talk, like, Gulliver gets an interview with the oldest person on the island, and they have to have, like, a massive chain of translators.
Oh, because the language changes.
Yeah, because of linguistic drift.
Wouldn't you have a population problem with
Well, it's not that everyone's immortal. It's just there's a minority of people who happen to be born immortal every few years or so, one in a generation or so.
Yeah. But of course, they end up with a lot of them because they never die.
Yeah. And then he return what?
Sorry, one in every generation. It's Buffy.
Yeah. And he makes his way back to England via Japan. I only know that because that's how it's listed in the parts, is like all these islands and then Japan. And then we come to the most biting and almost bitter bit of the satire, where he goes to he goes to the horse island. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. He goes to the horse island. He ends up on a land where basically humans are little more than chimps. Basically, they're and where we get the term Yahoo, because these brutish, obnoxious monkey men, and I apologize, if this is, if this does seem racist. It may be, but I doubt it, because the point of this section of the book, where the humans on this island are little better than monkeys, and the horses are the intelligent, well-mannered, sapient beings who actually don't have any words for deception or corruption, or are actually the masters. They've domesticated and tamed some of the Yahoos. And the point of this is Hissy. Okay, I'm going to say here's why I don't think it's necessarily racist, is because at first they think, Gulliver is impressive because he seems to be a rational Yahoo. But the whole point of this section is, English people and all, and Europeans, we're no better than the monkeys. Yeah.
Yep.
I can see the imperialism and the racial coding, but what I'm saying is the section of this, it's building up to the subversion of that. So it is a racist setup, a very racially coded setup, but then is subverted when Gulliver realizes that all people are no better than that were all a bunch of yahoos.
Yeah.
And the book ends with him returning to England, writing out his travels, and just living on his estate, talking to, living on his estate, and opening up essentially a horse rescue where he converses with the horses all day, because the horses are the actual moral and logical and sapient beings, the true sapient beings of the world. And that kind of brings, the horses are horses. The horses are literal horses. When he goes back, he opens up a horse, he essentially opens up a English horse sanctuary, and spends the rest of his life just taking care of the horses and talking with them.
So you became the first advocate for Peter.
Yeah. Well, no, because he didn't open up a kill shelter. So Hissy's disagreeing with me that it's not a subversion. And I'll stop here. Santee, I haven't seen the Jack Black movie, but from what I've seen of the trailers, it looks like it's another one of those adaptations that just kind of focuses on Lilliput and then doesn't do the rest of the story.
It's more based on the humor than the subplots.
Yeah.
But
so, and
there was a cartoon made of it as well in the 70s, and that's reasonably accurate, although he doesn't pee on the church.
Okay, so, I'm going to cede the point, because it is, racially coded, and when are we talking of the giant mecha suit? I don't remember a giant mecha suit. I doubt. It's like, I don't think there's a giant mecha suit. I think Santee's just being Santee. But because Lit Month is is about, in honor of Banned Book Week, I did check and see if it had been banned. So there is like a running, like, it's one of the books that is generally listed as banned, but but we don't actually have any indication that it had ever been officially banned.
Yeah. It would have been one of those stories at the time that the comments on what was actually going on was fairly obtuse.
Yeah.
So, I'm guessing that a lot of politicians wouldn't have even got it.
Well, and actually, at the time, it was very widely read.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you, Sandy. The TV miniseries is more accurate than the cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah. Gulliver versus Godzilla was one of the less successful movies in the franchise.
Did they do Godzilla versus Lilliput as well?
Yeah. Godzilla would just crush the entire island in one step.
Yeah. Though he might have problems against.
And yeah, I do remember watching the TV miniseries when I was younger, and that's what and at the beginning of the stream, as far as I'm aware, that's the only one that goes beyond Lilliput.
I was going to say that the miniseries wasn't that long ago. My oldest was like about 3.
I'm still in my 20s.
I'm aware
Just
of
about.
that. Just about still in your 20s, or
yeah, just about for another few months.
Another few months, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were not very old when the miniseries came out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Lilliput would so be screwed if Godzilla showed up.
Yeah, I don't know about the Brobdingnagians though, because they were probably about the same size as Godzilla.
Yeah. So yeah, instead of calling it Brobdingnag, because that is so ridiculously hard to try and pronounce because it's got way too many consonants that don't really go together.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it Kaiju Land, where everything is a kaiju.
Yeah, he went to Kaiju Land.
Yeah, he went to Kaiju Land, which is a peninsula of California.
What happened was when the kids got sick of the little pet iguanas, they'd flush them down the loo and they'd end up in Japan. Sorry.
Yeah. Though, like there is somewhat of a funny point where it's like the residents of Kaiju Land only eat freshwater fish because the fish in the ocean are actually actually proportioned. So they're not Kaiju Land size. They're normal size.
God, wouldn't it be terrifying if any of their freshwater salmon got out into the ocean, though?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the Megalodon was.
Yeah. Unless the Lilliputians had the technology to build a Megazord. Yeah,
Well,
so... Yeah, coming...
Yeah.
Coming next summer, it's Gulliver versus Mecha Gulliver.
Sorry. We've gone off track again.
Well, I mean, I think we're pretty much through it.
Yeah,
so,
you do well.
Yeah. Because, like, though I will say, that as I began reading Gulliver's Travels, for the second time, recently, I did realize that there is kind of a trend in, it's kind of a running trope in fantastical satire specifically. That I think we've just given away the plot of Gulliver's Travels if it were directed by Michael Bay. Well, see what happens is a Lilliputian nuclear submarine blows up Gulliver's ship, and so now Gulliver is all radioactive and angry, and he goes on a rampage.
No, which made him grow bigger. So he actually wasn't. He didn't arrive at the land little people. They were normal size. He'd just grown really big.
Yeah.
And the Brobdingnagians only got really big because they were experimenting with nuclear power too. I mean, they weren't as cautious as the Lilliputians.
Yeah. Well, actually, apparently, in the chapter, or in the chapter I'm about to read, or one of the chapters I'm about to read, Gulliver explains gunpowder to the king of Brobdingnag, and he's like, why the fuck would you make that? That's a horrible idea. Like the first two, like the first half of the book, it's like Lilliput is very small and petty, and Kaiju Land is big and rational.
Yeah.
But anyways, the point I was making is that fantastical satire, or satire with fantastical elements, has a rather common trope where where it pokes fun at human centrism. Because, instance, I'll ignore the racial quote. Like for instance, in the Horseland, there's the Horseland in Gulliver's Travels, which I won't go into detail to avoid the racial coding issues. In Planet of the Apes, which was originally written as a satire, so I'm talking about the book. It's part of the joke is, look at it, it's orangutans and gorillas and chimps being people. And there's a scene where like the protagonist has PTSD flashbacks when he sees the ape stock market. But then it ends with an ape, a chimp or something in a spaceship reading the account that they had, because it had been shot off into a rocket, because found footage is a big trope in literature. And the reveal is at the end of the story is that imagine humans ever being sentient enough to develop space travel and actually rule a planet.
Yeah.
And then in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you have, the fact that humans are only the third most intelligent species. The second, of course, being dolphins, and the first being mice, who had actually commissioned the construction of the Earth.
First place.
Yeah. And I mean...
humans, for that matter.
Yeah. And even Good Omens does poke a few jokes in that direction with all their talk about how whales have excellent big brains.
Yeah.
Think about the whales.
Yes.
And yes, flurfs are idiots.
Well, they're flurfs.
Yeah.
They're synonyms, basically, flurf and idiot.
Actually, I won't say idiot. I'll say willfully ignorant.
Yeah, maybe.
But any final thoughts on things that I might not have touched on or anything?
God. You expect me to have a better memory than you on this? Not particularly. I mean, it is one of those stories which says a lot about the time it was in, as we've already said. So, and it is also, even reading it now, sometimes if you don't know the history, hard to pick it out. So if you're a kid reading it, like I was the first time I read it, you don't get that. You get the fiction of it and everything, but you don't actually pick out that these are mirrors of things that are actually were the way society is and still are in some ways. I mean, it's not exactly the same things, because he was pointing at stuff that was happening basically around Europe at the time. It was the centrist stuff. So
Yeah, or early South Park, where aliens come to communicate with the cows as they're the most intelligent species.
Yeah. Oh.
But and and it's very it was written in the 1700s. It's very dated.
Yeah.
But that being said, there are observations and jokes that do hold up. Like, for instance, the bit about the pocket watch could easily be a cell phone joke.
Yes, definitely.
And the whole bit about human conflict and religious schisms being ultimately, or rather, the fact that religious schisms, get to the point where they break, where they lead to violence and war, is ultimately very petty. Or though a lot of the jokes are, a lot of the structural satire is basically just joking about the travelogue style. There's a joke about how Gulliver purposefully left some anecdotes out because he didn't want to be overlong like some other like most travelogues are.
Yeah.
So yeah, be aware that in the last section there is racial coding. And so I did link a video in my description. It's earlier video I did for top 10 books for indoctrinated preteens. I don't think on a second read Gulliver's Travels would exactly be in the #1 spot anymore, but it is still. I'd still put it somewhere on the list. But yeah, it's and that's kind of the thing when you're reading older literature, is you got to keep in mind that you're reading older literature.
Well, it's the same for Hissy and Scummer when they're talking about Asterix.
Yeah.
And it's a product of the time it was written in. And whilst we can have those parallels to what we have now, it's really about its time. And this is the bit Christians don't get about the Bible. It's a product of its time.
Yeah.
Just because you can read it and say, oh, this means something to me now, doesn't mean it was written for you.
Yeah. But it was written by an omnipotent God for all of time.
Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah.
I call bullshit.
Yeah. But yeah, like, if you're going to pick up something by Edgar Rice Burroughs, there's going to be casual Victorian racism.
Yeah.
It's something you got to be aware of.
It's the same with anything from then. I mean, you're going to find anything written, even last century, you depending on when it was written, is going to either contain sexism, homophobia, transphobia, or bigotry in some form. Racism, whatever. It's a product of its time. It's not good that it's like that, and we should condemn the thoughts that are in it. But that doesn't give us the right to burn books and stuff like that, because we can learn from the mistakes of the past.
Yeah. And of course, Microraptor read a Swedish series a while back that was written in the 1950s by a man who was around 50 or 60 years old. It took place in the last half of the 1800s and is actually surprisingly progressive. For being written by an old guy in the 50s and taking place in the 1800s. And yeah, casual Victorian racism is a trope all on its own.
And we could do a whole stream on it.
Oh yeah. Though I mean, this isn't casual Victorian racism. It's casual pre-Victorian racism.
Yeah. But it was there anyway. I mean, those aspects. I mean, there's still racism. There's still.
Yeah.
Straight off the cuff, anybody who outright says, "Oh, I'm not racist at all," or "I'm not bigoted in any way at all," is fucking lying.
Yeah, and of course,
we all have little elements of it. It's how we deal with that as elements.
And of course, I think Godless Scummer wants me to read this in the voice.
Go for it.
The Bible is historically and scientifically accurate, and evolution is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the world. And that's the nice things we say about it. But, casual pre-Victorian racism sounds like it might be worse.
What was casual pre-Victorian racism followed by casual pre-Victorian sex? Sorry, that was a bad joke.
Well, of course, because, casual pre-Victorian sex led to Victorian prudishness.
Of course. Which is why it's a no sex, please, we're British.
Yeah. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching a traitor and a convict discussing British satire. So, Jen, do you have anything coming up?
There'll be a couple more news panel shows. When you're not busy with me, I'll have to get you back on one.
Yeah. I'm still working 6 days a week.
I'm not harassing you. There should be a couple of them this week. There'll be one midweek at some point, and there'll be one next weekend. It's Saturday night US time. The midweek one, I will put it on my Twitter when it happens. If you want to know when I'm doing things, check it out on Twitter. I have videos planned. They won't necessarily come out. I don't have a lot of time with organising, shifting, and everything. So that if you're waiting for videos from me, you might be waiting a little bit until after I've moved. But it should be good once I finish moving, because I'll have more space and there'll be a better setup for it. So it'll be a lot better. Okay.
Ungrateful. Yeah, we are ungrateful colonials. And so Hissy, one of my favorite books is Shark Full of Casual Racism, and it's a satire too, but there's overt and covert racism, and I find it insidious when it's not explicit. Caliban in the Tempest is explicit, The Horse Island is not so much, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Hissy, because when you have people being insidious about something, it means they know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
So they're conscious that their racism or their bigotry in whatever form it is wrong, but they're still going to do it because they can.
Yeah.
And I'm with Hissy on that. That's where it's really, really wrong.
And Microraptor made my brain did a thing, so I will share my suffering. Queen Victoria in leather. with a crop in hand.
Who was their fancy guy who played by Billy Connolly in the movie? Oh god, it's gonna bug me now. I just have pictures of. I just had pictures of. What is her name? Maggie. No, it wasn't Maggie. Who's the other one? Who played Q in some of the Bond films?
I don't know.
Is it Judi Dench?
Yeah.
I've got images of her in leathers whipping Billy Connolly. So you made it worse.
Yeah. We are not amused. So,
Yeah.
this Saturday, as always, this coming Saturday, as always, we have secular D&D, where they are exploring the Draconic continent. And of course, next week on Media Musings, we are talking about Ray Bradbury. So we are going to be talking about a more there's we're moving up to the 1950s, 60s Cold War era.
Which books for next week?
Yeah. I mean, Julie's gotten Julie LaVoice of Wine and Reason has an open invitation as a guest because she's an English teacher, so she's got an open invitation for this stream, so or for this month at the very least. So it'll be up to her when she pops in, but expect her to pop in at least once or twice this month.
Yeah.
So next week, Ray Bradbury. Week after next we're talking banned books for Banned Book Week. And then we're going to close it off with a discussion of Dr. Faustus.
Cool.
And I do have a Teespring and a Patreon, and links are in the description.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, with all that said and done, just remember, don't choke on the indoctrination.
Well done, Ray.
Damn it, I did it again.
You did it again.